Moscow had consistently said, and that Russia had no plans to occupy Ukraine, and yet here we are. So many weeks later, Russian forces have invaded Ukraine. They're pushing towards Kyiv. People all over the world, including here in the Philippines, are seeing really tragic, very troubling images of destruction, women, children, millions of people fleeing, residential buildings bombed. Just before the show, we reported school buildings bombed. What will it take for Russia to consider calls, urgent calls by the world and the international community to step back from this invasion and this situation?
Thank you so much, but I'd like to be more precise in definitions, because we are now conducting a special military operation, as our president said. Special military operation has a special goals, a special subjects. Russia is not waging a war against Ukraine, as not invading. In fact, Russia is doing now what we are doing now. It's trying to eliminate the threat coming from Ukrainian territory, which has been created by NATO countries, led by the United States. I'd like to remind you a little bit about the story of this conflict. After coup d'etat in 2014 in Ukraine, the new Kyiv regime began to openly encourage Nazi sentiments in the country. In fact, they aimed at creating anti-Russia on the territory. They do the same Crimea, if you don't forget it, voted to reunite with Russia. Other region, first of all, Donetsk and Lugansk, who also declared independence, were actually subject to genocide by Kyiv, with the tacit approval of the collective West. You are talking about victims, yes, many victims, but you should remind that for 8 years, NATO has been creating military infrastructure in Ukraine, opening biological labs and developing new threats, something like nuclear one. Russia concerns were not taken into account. All our attempts to negotiate security guarantees with the United States, launched last December, unfortunately failed. US rejected Russian proposal. So we had no chance but to recognize the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic and to start the special military operation.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, we're familiar and we understand the language that Moscow would prefer to use here. We know you do not want to use the word war. We know you do not want to acknowledge the word invasion. We, in fact, know that even within Russia and within Moscow, those words are practically banned in media. But I'll take the discussion on the 2 points that you've raised. One is on NATO, but I'll start with your argument about the history of this, arguing that there is a neo-Nazi movement within, starting from the very top of the government and so on, and the separatist movements in the Donbas region. But all international, and most international coverage and analysts have said that one, the separatist movements there were goaded by Russia, encouraged by Russia. And to the second point, that the supposed ethnic war being waged by a supposed neo-Nazi government has no basis in fact. And it is an exaggerated story, which is essentially being used as pretext by Russia precisely to now encourage an invasion that, let's face it, has gone beyond the Donbas region. If that was the whole point of this, which is to secure the Donbas, that the invasion, the special operations, have you called it, have clearly gone way beyond that.
You are trying to, for my point of view, to substitute the same concept. It's a very good use of our conversation, but I'd like to be more precise by speaking that we are trying to create the atmosphere of confidence and security that we need for my country, not only for my country, but the whole European continent. We are speaking about the security, you are speaking about the so-called invasion. It is a real substitution of concept, because without the creation of security in the whole European continent, it's impossible to create the atmosphere of cooperation and interaction with this very important area of the world. It's my approach, and I think that it should be very logical.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, you've talked about Russia trying to create an atmosphere of confidence and security, not just for Russia, but for the European continent. But unfortunately, that does not seem to be the effect of what's been happening in the last 4 weeks. Clearly, it has not created confidence or security, not just in Ukraine, but as well in the entire European continent. I think that's a fair assessment of the effect of what's been happening in this conflict. So, at least as far as that objective is concerned, do you think that that objective is being met?
I repeat that maybe we should have some kind of genesis of these conflicts. Without that, we can't understand the real sources of the conflicts, the real continuation, how we can go out from this crisis. I've just said that in December last year, we proposed to US and NATO some very important agreements regarding the security in the whole continent. We need this security, as also Ukraine, as independent state, also needs the security. And we would like to assure the security for the whole country, for the entire continent, but by signing legally binding agreements, legally binding documents. Only in this case, by creating a neutral status for Ukraine, for example, we can achieve this goal. Without that, it's impossible in this trying time to achieve very logical and very, I can say, important target.